You can clearly see that in this tray that I have seeded many different things, and the germination rates were obviously very, very different. What we're going to work on today is this one group, which is right here, and we're going to have to separate them because they came up so heavily. And that's what we're going to do now. Okay, here again we have filled a container that we're going to use with the potting mix. We're going from potting mix to potting mix when we do the division or separation. And as before, the first step is to water the mix down. The soil that we're feeding into must be damp. There's nothing that will kill a plant quicker than dry or roots going into dry soil. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this container. I reach underneath and squeeze the container a little bit, and that allows the plant to release very, very simply. And as you can see, there's a lot of plants in this little receptacle. We're now going to divide these into our potting soil. Okay, the first step in separation is I use this is a skewer that you can purchase at H-E-B or any one of the box stores, and I actually just start loosening the roots ball that these plants have generated. And as you can see, the soil falls out very, very nicely and separates fairly easily. It's much easier to do this if the soil is slightly drier, so don't water the plants that you want to separate for a day or so before you separate them. Okay, and essentially what I'm going to try to do is to remove the larger plants first. And I do this by just actually wiggling them apart. Just work them apart slowly. And now you have multiples here, and if you notice, I'm working right over the area that I'm going to plant. So once I have removed the first plant, I usually remove several of them. The root systems are in fine shape, and the first thing I do is actually poke a hole in the soil. I usually do this with multiples. I take the plant by the top leaf, lay it down so that the roots are very close to the hole, and with my skewer, I push them down, and then I lightly pat the soil around the plant. Same thing with the next one. Push all of the roots. Every one of those white roots must go in the hole. If it lays on the surface, the plant has got a good chance of dying. You have to get the soil, the roots under the soil. Now, understand that the smaller the plant, the more you have to be careful on your separation technique. The bigger the plant, the bigger the roots, the more difficult it is to separate. So it's really, you have to make a judgment. Let's get this big one out here and you can see what the difference in the root mass is. See, again, look at the difference in the roots. If you have a lot of plants this size, getting them separated is a real job. I'm opening my hole up a little bit more this time, but I'm essentially working all of those roots into my potting soil and then working the soil around the plant, just like that.